Well, it's 9 a.m., so I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Hold on. What'd you say?
Roll call, please.
Okay. Um, Cook
Sure.
and Lawson, Reister,
Here.
Wyatt.
Here.
Okay. And I think Lori accepted the meeting, but she's just not on yet. So I don't know if we have a quorum. So
Okay.
if she logs in, then I'll enter.
Sure.
I'll put her in the meeting.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I don't believe we have any citizens' requests or oral presentations, so we'll move into general government. Item A, discussion action regarding appeal of DOT decision regarding ATE program.
Okay, I assume that means I'm up.
Yes, please.
Okay. First, thanks for accommodating my schedule with a video meeting today, folks. My husband had hip replacement surgery on Friday, and he had some complications with AFib, but we are now home, and he's walking with a walker, so yay. So thanks for accommodating me. This makes things much easier. Okay, two. As you know, we did not receive a permit under Iowa Code Section 321P.1 to continue our ATE system. We therefore have a choice of just accepting that decision or alternatively appealing to the director of the Department of Transportation with our documents and our arguments for why we think we should get our permit. I wanted the officers involved on this. Also, by way of background, I will tell you my other city, Hazleton, who had an ATE system, has chosen to not appeal the decision. I can't tell you their reasons. They didn't really give them to me. I just got notification from the mayor that they've decided to not appeal that decision. They have a different provider than you do for the system. They have a company called Genoptic, not Ultimate. That company is going to keep the cameras on and acquire data just like ours are. But that company did indicate to Hazleton that they're wanting to sit back and wait a little bit to see what happens with this landscape because it seems to be ever changing, and they're wondering if someone's going to file a lawsuit on behalf of the companies, maybe. I don't know, any number of things that could potentially go in that direction. So that's that background there. I did want the officers to weigh in for you all on whether or not they think that their data that they submitted with the permit kind of proved the definition of the code section. It's pretty clear when you read 321P as a whole that the track they took for this code section was to use ATE systems to address what they're calling critical traffic safety issues. And they've defined those as traffic violations resulting in a traffic collision or accident, and traffic collisions and accidents resulting in serious injury or death occurring at a location. So my guess, and again, this is just my guess, is that the DOT viewed our data as not necessary because there weren't enough critical traffic safety issues. Again, that's just a guess. So I'm hoping that Scott and or Chief Banks can kind of weigh in on that in terms of what they think our data revealed, because that's important in analyzing whether or not an appeal would be successful, right? If our data doesn't suggest that we have, and here's the subsection G specifically says an explanation detailing the reasons that the use of a system at a location is appropriate and necessary, and the least restrictive means to address the critical traffic safety issues. There are a number of other subsections, as our law enforcement department knows, of information they wanted in the application. Records detailing the number and description of traffic violations, alternative methods to improve traffic safety, the proposed cause of the critical traffic safety issues, So in any event, with that, I'll take any questions first, and then let the department weigh in on whether or not they think we provided information that proved we had a critical traffic safety issue at the locations where our cameras were. I can't hear. Whoever's talking, I can't hear.
It might be a radio because there isn't anybody here and doesn't look like anybody's talking.
Nobody's talking? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Could be a radio. All right. So questions first. Council members' questions with any of the stuff that I rattled off.
So I got one. So I know that they didn't give any feedback. Did they definitively say they wouldn't, or is that something we might be able to reach out and ask for?
So I think the denial letter simply says not necessary. It doesn't explain in great detail why they denied our permit. It just simply says, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, it was either not needed or not necessary, something along those lines.
Yeah, they deemed them not necessary, and I did reach out to Mr. Lorenzen to get some clarification. I thought I had sent it out, and basically he reverted back to the critical traffic safety issues. They don't exist in the exact pinpointed location where the cameras are located, and that's what they use to deem them not necessary.
Okay. So they did focus on you don't have enough traffic safety issues at where those cameras were.
Yeah.
So did we have data on accidents in those vicinities then, just not where the cameras were?
Yeah, I sent them all of our traffic crash data from our entire city limits, and generally, being our cameras are in the middle of residential neighborhoods, our nearest accidents were at the closest intersections. So even though we've seen a reduction of nearly half of our traffic accidents within town as a whole, they weren't in that pinpointed location.
I would offer at least one hypothesis about some of that reduction. And that is, I'm hearing a lot of people say they just avoid Hudson. It's a speed trap. There's tons of cops. They're screw the cameras. And so I avoid Hudson. And we have friends that won't come to our house because the camera's in front of them because they got enough tickets. And so I don't think that we can attribute the decrease in accidents purely to cameras. I think there are probably a lot of other reasons. One of them might be because people are avoiding Hudson because of the cameras.
One thing
I kind of just,
oh,
I
sorry.
was going to say, I kind of disagree with that, Matt. I think you hear the ones that talk about that, and not that it may not be the case for some people, but I think the majority of people are, I think you hear the loud ones that talk about that a lot, but not necessarily the majority. But do we know of any other communities? I know you said Hazleton's not going to, but do we know of any other communities that are appealing?
I do not. I haven't heard well, Waterloo got some of their cameras, correct, gentlemen? Scott and Dan, did Waterloo got to keep some, but not all, right?
Waterloo lost all of their stationary or fixed locations. They were able to keep their Rambo unit, which, the way I understand it, they can only place in school zones now and specific areas. And I believe they got to keep their red light cameras at certain intersections, but all their fixed locations were nixed.
I mean, I think the question really needs to become, and this is probably more directed towards Scott based upon the data we sent them. Do we even have a likelihood of success on a review from the director based upon our data? Is there anything we did not provide them or any tweaking of the data that you've identified that you think would change their analysis?
I don't think they're going to change their minds because, I mean, said between the lines, they're not concerned about prevention. They're more concerned about reaction to a problem. And like I said, our data hasn't changed since we sent it back in June. So I think an appeal is just going to end in the same result.
Scott, did that data show just a speed or the amount of speed? You know, say we those things wrote a ticket for 25, 35, 45 mile an hour over the speed limit. Did it show that data?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess I should add too that I think we only have my time frame is 20 days. I sent an email to Mr. Lorenzen asking confirmation on what our deadline was to seek a review, and I didn't get a response back. And I found one code section that I think was applicable, and that said 20 days. So I think our timeline to request a review would be 20 days from October 2nd.
Any other questions for Heather or discussion?
So Scott,
You
what
have-
I think what I hear you saying is there's not we can't change the problem that you've identified in terms of where the critical traffic safety issues are. Meaning, the only way I know how to say this is like for an actual, you said most of the cameras are in residential neighborhoods, but the traffic safety issues are happening at the intersections, correct?
Correct.
So right now we use speed cameras. Could we approach it differently? I'm just hypothetically, I'm not asking, I'm not implying, I'm just asking. Would the critical traffic safety data then be more appropriate that we have for a failure to obey a stop sign, for instance?
Yeah, a lot of our accidents are just failure to stop. You know, Eldora and South Hudson Road, you know, a lot of it's probably 50-50 just failure to stop at the stop sign because they're going too fast or their failure to yield right of ways.
Okay. Which cameras can issue the failure to obey stop sign violations as well. But we'd have to shift our entire system, right? The camera locations would have to change, and that's not where they're currently at,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Personally, if it's me that's putting any input into this, I say, just from hearing what Scott's saying and you're saying, Heather, is that we kind of sit back and wait and see if anybody else is going to do anything. And at this point, because if we appeal and it doesn't change anything, we've just kind of spun wheels. But I foresee somebody like a Cedar Rapids, a Des Moines, or somebody doing, or the company, it's just like you said, putting together a lawsuit, and we can just kind of see what happens. But that's just me personally.
Right. Well, you have the question before you is the timely one that you have to make a decision is, are you going to ask for a review of his decision? If you do not ask for a review of his decision, then you're prohibited from doing anything else with your ATE system because you don't have a permit, and you can wait and apply for a permit later. The code section doesn't say technically, the people who didn't have them, right, aren't going to get an answer till 2026. So for you guys, I'm going to guess just, being safe, you wouldn't be able to apply for another permit till at least 2026 if you wanted to do this type of law enforcement issue again. And then 2, is it possible that between now and 2026 or 2027, this code section changes? Sure. Is it possible that someone engages in a lawsuit and indicates that, somehow this is depriving the Altamont and Genoptic people from, I don't know, that I'm sure there's some claim they can make, some sort of interference with their business or something. It's going to be ever changing. I shouldn't say ever changing. this is a hot button issue that I don't necessarily see settling down quickly, but that's completely speculative on my part.
So Heather, you used the word review recently. That's the same as the appeal though, correct?
Yeah, they're not calling it a, well, they did use the word appeal in their news release. It's an administrative review to the director of the Department of Transportation. So the decision to deny our permit was done by a team of individuals associated with the Department of Transportation. If you want to contest the decision of that group, you then submit your appeal to the actual director of the Department of Transportation. He then reviews it and decides whether or not that was a correct decision or not.
The likelihood that that would come with more feedback.
Yeah. Not
Not great.
Not very likely, because there's no code section that says something along the lines of, in denying the permit, the director shall state the reasons why it was denied in great detail. You know what I mean? There's no parameters. He could issue a one-page sentence that says, I've reviewed everything and I'm affirming the denial of your permit.
And what's involved in filing this review or review appeal?
Scott and our department would have to work on kind of resubmitting all the data, maybe retooling it a little bit if he thought he could retool it in a way that highlights why this thing solves critical traffic safety issues at the location where the camera is. And he'd have to fit it squarely within 321P sub 2, and basically say your review folks missed X, Y, and Z. You know, you'd have to find something to point out why they were wrong. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful, right?
It is going to take, some work and effort on our end.
Correct. Yes.
And it kind of sounds to me like maybe we're not feeling like we have the data to really put that out there anyway.
Because I've got the data, the data's just not good enough for them. Like I said, they're not focused on prevention in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. They're
right. I think Scott's right. When you read this code section from 20 feet above, you get a vibe that what they want ATE cameras to be used for are to address significant traffic accidents, not speed. That they don't connect the dots that speed leads to traffic accidents. And maybe they do. But I'm just saying the way it reads, it's about whether or not the camera is necessary in order to prevent where you've already seen critical traffic safety accidents. So I guess that's kind of my question for Scott. If you had data that showed that 90% of an accident that occurred at, I don't know, pick an intersection for me, Scott.
Schrock and 63.
Okay. So if you had data that indicated that 90% of the accidents that occurred at that intersection were caused by speed, then that's the data they're looking for. And I don't know how you get that data other than admissions in the reports that the person was going too fast for conditions and blew the stop sign. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very rare occasion that you make that determination. Like I said, most of our accidents are failure to yield.
I think that if you look at, I think 11 cameras were allowed to continue in Iowa, 4 of them in Cedar Rapids, 4 in Davenport, 1 in LeClaire, 1 in Marshalltown, and 1 in Des Moines. The ones I'm most familiar with are on that S curve in Cedar Rapids, and if their standard of accident prevention is on par with what you see on that S curve, there's no way we're even in that universe.
Meaning, you're saying meaning it's so obvious that accidents occur on that S curve because of speed and that they're so replete because of speed. You're saying that the nexus is so obvious there and that nexus is so far away from where ours
Yeah.
are. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
On it.
Would we
Yeah,
have
I-
the would we have the data that, I mean, yes, this person blew the stop sign there at Schrock and 63, but they also then were issued a citation because they were speeding.
Well, I'd have to go back and do a bunch of digging over the last year to see, okay, yeah, this car was speeding, came up to the stop sign and then failed to yield, but yet the speed still isn't a contributing factor to coming to a stop and just not looking.
Okay.
And to touch on Matt's with the S curves, that he is right. That's a whole different beast in itself because you're dealing with, an elevated multi-lane highway that, in the winter is like an ice skating rink, versus we're flat surface in a residential area that is, plowed frequently and doesn't see the amount of traffic that an interstate highway does. But does that make the drivers on that road more special than the family backing their car out of their driveway on Eldora?
And you're right, Scott. I mean, if we had accidents on Ranchero or Schrock where residential people are leaving the driveway and get hit because of high speed, I think that would validate our case. We just don't have that type of information, or we don't have that type of accident.
Yeah. We're fortunate enough we started without having, the fatalities of people backing out of their driveways or kids crossing the road or bicyclists getting hurt. Our goal is to keep it that way. In the areas where we recognize we have the speed issues. But like I said, the DOT's doesn't seem to be interested in continuing that prevention.
Any other thoughts or?
Well, I guess what I feel like I'm hearing is we feel that perhaps we don't have the exact type of data that they are looking for at this time. And, I hate to say it'd be a waste of time, but it seems to me like it wouldn't be a wise use of time right now to move forward on the appeal. That's what I feel like I'm hearing.
I think it's accurate to say that I'm fairly confident saying your likelihood of success on a review of this decision is not high.
I would
Um,
agree.
And if I were to put this in the context of if I were talking to a private pay client who was contemplating an appeal, I would be saying, if I were you, I would not spend, $3,500 on an appeal to not get what you're trying to achieve. Time may completely change, the analysis there in terms of how, again, this code section could get changed. Is that going to happen overnight? No. There's going to be some time that's going to go by before this might change, and it might never change. I mean, people are pretty passionate about these ATE systems, and I get it. I see both sides of it. I understand. I just, right now, the general temperament, at least in Des Moines, is that they're not favored.
Do the
So,
photo
Heather, do you feel we need?
enforced, do the photo enforced signs have to come down?
Yeah.
Heather, at this time, then do you think we should do a motion on this or just kind of?
Yeah, I think just for record keeping purposes, it needs to be one way or the other, either a motion to not
I move,
seek
I move that
review.
we do not appeal for a review.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call.
All right, Reister,
Aye.
Sewell,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Wyatt,
Aye.
and Cook.
Aye.
Motion carried then. At this time, I will go ahead and entertain then a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 21.5H to avoid disclosure of specific law enforcement matters such as allowable tolerances or criteria for the selection, prosecution, or settlement of cases, which if disclosed would facilitate disregard of requirements imposed by law.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor of moving into closed session? Do we need roll call? I'm sorry. Or is just
Sure, go ahead.
okay, roll call?
Lawson.
Aye.
Cook.
Aye.
Wyatt.
Aye.
Reister.
Aye.
Sewell.
Aye.
Okay,
All right.
So I would
then
move that we come out of closed session.
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are now back in open session.
Chrissy, is there anybody that's waiting that needs to be let in?
No, there's not.
Okay, so now you can make your motion outside of closed, which was a motion to pursue the municipal infractions pending on October 18th.
Heather, I would make that motion that we proceed with whatever you said.
The municipal infractions pending on October 18th.
Thank you. That was a big mouthful. I don't think I could have got it all out.
It's okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call then, please.
Lawson. Cook.
Aye.
Reister.
No.
Wyatt.
Aye.
Sewell. Lori, Sewell.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 4-1.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.